Hey everyone, thank you for joining this episode of Soundbites. Today we have a really special guest. We have Kurt Stein, who's the president and CEO of DCT Strategy. It's a digital transformation consulting company that helps organizations leverage the latest technology, drive growth and optimization performance in their businesses. Hey Kurt, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Really a pleasure to be here.
So, where we want to kick these things off usually is find out where you came from. Like, how did you get from where you were to where you are? What happened all in between there?
Yeah,
it's a
big long question.
Right?
Yeah. It's I always love these stories too. I love listening to a lot of people tell their stories because it's very interesting and fascinating. So I'll tell you this much. I did not start out as a kid taking apart computers. I didn't watch, I watched Star Wars. I watched, Star Trek and all those. I like that stuff, but I was not the person that was completely head over heels about science and computers and things of that nature. I liked them, but that was that.
So you were like nerd adjacent, basically,
yeah,
what you're saying. Okay.
I loved learning. I loved understanding, and it's carried throughout my life. But I certainly was not on that path. And I'll say this much too. There's probably a lot of people in the audience that knew what they wanted to do and found that direction. I was the complete opposite. I did not know what I wanted to do. I did not know where I was going to be. What I knew was I was going to be something. I was ambitious, but I had no pathway, I had no guidance, and I was really trying to find my way. So to a lot of people, I believe in coaching now. I believe in parents being part of things because having a coach or having somebody to guide you along the way certainly does cut out a lot of the troubles along the way and gives you a little more clarity in terms of your path. So where did I begin? In high school, I played sports. I played lacrosse in high school. And then I had no idea what I wanted to do when it came to graduating and where to go to college. In my circumstances, I knew that I had to pay for college myself. My parents did not have the money to pay for my college education. And I certainly didn't want to burden them with any loans because it wasn't the right thing to do. So I already started out knowing that I have to do this myself. I have to figure it out. The problem is I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I certainly wanted to go away to college. If you guys went away to college, I know it's fascinating. It's fun. If you can keep your grades up, you can have an absolutely great time. And I encourage my kids now to go away to school because they can learn so much being on their own as long as they keep their grades up. But I was not able to really experience that. So at 18 years old, I got a job at UPS. And the reason I went to UPS is that somebody within the family worked there as a driver. And they said, hey, you come work here, you get full benefits, get paid by the hour. It's constant work. And if you work certain shifts, you'll get tuition reimbursement. So I was like, oh, wow, let's go work at UPS. That's a great company, right? What do I know at 18 years old? So I got the job there. And that's when I found out kind of how the inner workings were. You had to go into a trailer, a 52-foot trailer, and you had to unload a trailer, and you had to do it in a certain time frame, whether it's an hour or an hour and a half. So I was paid $8 an hour. So if you do the correlation, I got paid $8 to unload a 52-foot trailer. Sounds a little insane. Now it's probably like $15 an hour, but still, that's a lot of work. I was soaked head to toe. It was like I couldn't believe what I was doing. But I said, look, I'm gonna stick this out. I'm gonna stay with it because it's a good company. And over some time, like 6 months or so, I found out you can get out of the trucks and you can go up on what's called a sorting aisle. They unload the trucks and it's got to come to somebody and they pick the box up. You have to look at a label and you have to put it on a belt, and that belt goes to what's called the outbound, to a trailer on the other side of the building that gets all the zip codes from a certain area, and then they bring the boxes to another building and they do it all over again. Or they put them inside the brown trucks. So that's what I learned. I said, hey, I can go here and get an extra $2 per hour to go sort. So I did that. And I learned that part of the business. And then I said, hey, I can go into management, go put on a suit and tie. I can get some experience in management, leave the union, because that might be good for me when it comes to my career. Again, this is me thinking of it, nobody telling me to do that. And I made that decision to move into management. And the funny story is I make this comment saying it's like going to the dark side. When you leave the union and you go into management, everybody that you thought was your friend is no longer your friend. And it's just by making that little switch, right? And I mean, people have gone through that when you leave a company you work at, you think everybody's your friend, and all of a sudden nobody wants to talk to you anymore, or something of that nature, right? You don't really know. So I went into management, and the reason why I did that is I wanted to get the experience on my belt, and it certainly provided me that experience. And then I ended up moving to a midnight shift because they gave tuition reimbursement. So I think at the time they gave about $4,000 per semester. And I was going to Hofstra University. And I think Hofstra was about $8,000 per semester, maybe a little bit less. So it almost covered my entire bill. But while I was there, I certainly learned a lot. I learned pressure. I learned how to work within time frames. You know, if you ever saw that movie with FedEx, what is it, with Tom Hanks and the ball Wilson? I was just thinking about it the other day. It's what's the movie where he's flying in a plane, the plane crashes on the island, and Tom Hanks has the little ball Wilson, right?
Yeah, Castaway.
Castaway, yeah. So he talks about the whole beginning of FedEx. In the beginning is everything's timed. Everything's about this amount of time. If it doesn't happen, all hell breaks loose. Well, that was the same thing at UPS. You had 3 hours to complete a job. It didn't matter if people called in sick. It didn't matter if boxes broke. It didn't matter if there was a big chemical spill. They didn't care. You had to get the job done in a certain amount of time. So what did I learn? I learned how to deal with tremendous amounts of pressure because they weren't afraid to curse at you. They weren't afraid to scream at you, which typically does not happen in the corporate world, right? When you go to corporate world,
depends on where you work.
Yeah.
No, we'll tell you a story about where we came from.
So I went through extreme amounts of pressure there in order to complete a job. And I also learned how to manage people, but not manage people by firing them, which is, as we know, a lot of people wield that power of hiring and firing in order to get you to do things. I couldn't do that. I had to deal with unions, et cetera. So I had to motivate people by treating them with respect and trying to get them to work a little harder and a little bit faster on a midnight shift in order to get the job done. And I was successful in doing so. So I got pressure under my belt. I got completed in a certain amount of time frame. And I got working with people in order to motivate people as opposed to threatening to fire them. So, that's what I wanted to learn from the whole entire process. And that's what I did until one day my brother-in-law saw that I was doing all these jobs. And he said, I can get you an opportunity to interview at AT&T. So I had to quickly put together a resume, handed it in. And then, there's a funny story about how I got the job there. So, I mean, I'll pause for a moment. I don't know if you have any questions for me before I do the next one.
No, it's a great flow. I think it's really interesting how, when you're at UPS, you get to experience not only the management, but you started doing the very basic entry-level jobs. So you understood what it was like to be an operator. You understood those pressures and that time crunch. You understood the physical nature of that role. You understood packing and sorting. So you weren't just a manager that was hired in with an MBA under their belt and we just got to go after the metrics. You had done those roles. So you had a unique perspective on what it takes to do that, what success looks like, which gives you a level of empathy when managing people to explain what performance should be acceptable and what isn't and how to manage that, I think that's a huge foundational story.
Yeah, I wonder, at 18, as you're getting paid $8 an hour to unload an entire truck, what about your personality do you think made you want to stick that out? Because I think there are plenty of people who would do that for a week or so and be like, this, maybe there's something else here. But what about, you said it was a great company, but do you think there's anything more that made you stick around and keep going?
That's a great question because you're 100% correct. There are a lot of people that said, forget this, I am out of here. Mm-hmm. When it was soaking wet head to toe, working in the summertime, there was no air conditioning. They're thinking this is insane. But the reason why I did it is one, UPS is a great company. So I knew at some point in time, tuition reimbursement would be something I'd want. Number two was full health benefits. It was 100%. So when my parents didn't have it, I was at least able to take care of myself from that perspective. And while the money wasn't that big, I was able to get other jobs. So, I mean, I was valet parking. I was trying to do other things to get money. And it probably goes back to who I am as a person. And I guess that could be a lot of people. Do you have it within you to have ambition and to stick it out, even though things get tough? Or do you fold your deck and push your cards in and say, I'm out of here? And it's a good question because I didn't go into a little detail of it, but that's what it taught me. I was able to see truly who I was as a person at that age, especially in management. And I'll give you an example because I could have quit. So in managing an outbound area, you have a bunch of chutes that come into trucks, if you can picture it. And the place is enormous. It's 3-4 football fields big, right? It's a massive place. And then there's somebody that sits like 20 feet up in the sky as a big belt comes on. They just start throwing packages down into trucks. And you can never predict the volume of packages that are going to one particular truck. You can get an entire flow that goes to one truck that overwhelms that truck and overwhelms the person in there. And what happens is packages just start falling all over the place. So it becomes absolute chaos. And then on top of it, to add more pressure to the situation, you have your bosses coming by screaming at you, saying that you don't know what you're doing. You can't run, a shift for your life. You have people that are walking all over you. What are you letting them do to you? They're not going fast enough. You have to get this thing done in time, right? So they are vicious. So you have the pressures of things failing. You have people in the trailers going, this is crazy. I'm giving up. Packages going everywhere. I'm in your union. I'm not supposed to work in these conditions. And then you have a supervisor come by screaming at you. So you have a situation of saying everything's falling apart around me. What do I do? And that goes back to your question about, what made you do it? And I guess it was within me where I said, look, I can make it through this. Let me take a moment and, feel that pressure and that, you want to scream and you want to just say, hey, quit, I'm out of here. But I thought to myself, hey, I can make this thing happen. I can fix this. I can get through this. And I did. And I think that goes back to anything in life and building a business or anything. You have a tough situation. You work your way through it. And then the next time you don't make certain mistakes again, or you can now see when something's about to happen and then you can get yourself out of it. So it really goes back to, I think it was who I was as a person. I didn't want to give up. I felt it was a great opportunity for me. It was very challenging. It was very pressure oriented, but I felt if I stuck it through, especially in management, it would provide me that stepping stone to get into another company. So that was like, I guess, the best vision of clarity for me as to why I would continue to do it.
So it was equal parts of that role exposing your grit and equal part of it like honing that grit to continue to go forward. No, that's I like that. That's a really interesting background story. So then you leave that environment, you take all that experience, you get an opportunity at AT&T, and now the person who wasn't the electronics tinkerer technologist is thrown into that tech space right about the time that probably mobile phones and all that were just really exploding in that industry, right?
Yeah, it was actually the MPLS, like the worldwide, the MPLS itself just became big, and data became huge in 1998 for AT&T. They were the majority of their revenues were coming from voice, was from long distance phone calls. And then they had a major shift from 97 to 98 where they were like, if we don't shift this business, we're in trouble. And it became, majority of it was data. But the quick thing, just talking about challenge again, I had to go through a sales assessment to get hired by AT&T. I was never in sales. I didn't know anything about sales. I didn't know what you're supposed to do when it came to sales. All I had was somebody at AT&T, a person that made it through the test, coach me on how I should go about this sales assessment. And like anything else in life, you could explain something to somebody. That doesn't mean they're going to retain it and they're going to successfully implement it.
Sure.
So I had to leave UPS at like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. I drove to New Jersey. It was at a hotel. They rented out 2 or 3 hotel rooms, and they had a bunch of AT&T employees playing a CEO, a CFO, and they'd sit in a room, and I had to sit in another room and take a case study, read the case study, and then go back into the room in a half an hour and go pitch as to why are you going to buy this, right? So I'm nervous, I'm exhausted, but I went through it and it worked, and I passed. Otherwise, I never would have got to AT&T. So when I got to AT&T, the first role they put me in was sales support. They didn't want to throw me immediately into sales without any experience because it is very difficult. There's things you just don't know, and people have failed at it quickly. So I went into the sales support role for about 6 months, and then here's an interesting part I'm going to add into. You were taking this through, going from UPS with all that experience, the environment, all that, and then going into AT&T. Let me paint the picture of what it was like. I went from, you have to get things done quickly. You have to move at a rapid pace. You have to have the energy and excitement of a racehorse. Otherwise, if you weren't keeping that momentum up and that spirit and that adrenaline, they would have come down on you hard. So I come from that environment and I go into the corporate environment of AT&T where everybody is sitting in cubicles, speaking nicely. Hey, we got to get this done. When should we get this done? Do you have this? Hey, we're having a meeting. Hey guys, we're gonna go into this meeting right now. And I am like bouncing off the walls like a lunatic. And they're all trying to figure out who is this guy. And all I'm thinking to myself is like, oh, I'm ready to go. Coach, put me in. Let's go. And they were, they started telling me after, they thought I was out of my mind. They were like, hey, calm down. It's not the way we do things here. You just got to take it easy. And all I thought to myself is if I don't kind of keep this energy up and this ambition to learn, because I didn't know anything about it. I was reading every manual, every industry periodical that came out. I was reading everything I possibly could about the technology because I knew I was already behind. I didn't know enough, and I was probably not going to keep my job if I didn't, put the time in. And I figured if I keep this momentum up, then perhaps I'll keep my job, because at the end of the day, a boss can tell you, hey, you need to do this or don't do that. But if you don't do it and you listen to what they say and you're not successful, you're sitting in front of them and they're telling you, sorry, you're fired. And you're like, but you told me not to do that. And they're like, I'm sorry, I can't keep you. Yeah. So I didn't want to be in that position. So within 6 months, I actually started selling, and I was on the phones making cold calls. It was probably the worst thing to ever do in the entire world, is to get, to do cold calls. The rejection is off the charts. I mean, I was never hung up, so many times before in my life. And then I found that if I worked from a friendship or a partnership perspective with customers, if I just told people that I can get something delivered for you at this price and stick with that price, it's firm, right? Here's what your code is. And I got it installed in time, or the time frame I said it was going to be installed in, that perhaps clients would stay with me. And my first client was a company called Mediterranean Shipping Company, which was a large cargo shipping company in the US in 1999. It's now the largest cargo shipping company in the world. It's like 46 billion. And my first conversation was with the director of IT. And I said, look, I can get you an internet circuit in 30 to 45 days. And here's the price point. And next, he called me and said, come in the office. I want to talk to you about my MPLS network. It was a 25 site network. And I was like, oh, this is great. I'm brand new. I don't understand why I'm sitting here. And he told me, he said, you said it was going to be 30 to 45 days. Everybody else tells me something that's not possible. And you're the one that stuck to your commitment. I want to do more business with you. And that was when the light bulb went off. And I was like, wow, this is pretty simple, this sales stuff. Don't lie. Tell people what you're going to do within a time frame you're going to do it, and they'll provide you more business. Yeah. And from that point on, that was my career at AT&T, and I became very successful.
So you used your level of grit to understand what you didn't know, pushed yourself ahead of the people that were already there because you were going to learn and consume, and you were going to excel at it just based on your background. Yep. And use that to get yourself into a role or an opportunity where you could be with a large shipping provider to deploy a good opportunity. And when you had the opportunity to say, hey, we can do it in this shorter time frame to try and close the sale, you relied on using that trust equity to really make sure you could drive the first one across the line, deliver on it, build that trust, which then allowed you to capture significantly more business and a better long-term relationship. Yep. And I'm guessing you use those principles to help form your new company to be able to deliver that kind of outcome to your customers as well.
Yep. So I spent 15 years at AT&T. I was what was called a client business manager. So my responsibility was to drive as much revenue for AT&T within the businesses itself, and they held me responsible for it. So the interesting part is, what most people don't realize in large companies is that your manager is supposed to be there as a tool to support you, especially in sales. They are a tool in order to support you to either get a sale over the line or something you need from a sales perspective. They're a tool in your tool belt. it's not a derogatory term. It's just they say, I'm here to help you. What do you need? But from an administrative standpoint, they are your boss. Where's the report? When is this? When are you handing it in? Did you do your expenses? Where, do you need approval for going on a trip? That's where you have to ask them for permission. But from a sales perspective, they are purely about, what do you need me to do? So I spent almost 16 years at AT&T running very large accounts. And I mean, so many accounts I had. I kept med shipping from 1999 to 2013. I left there with BlackRock, Mediterranean Shipping Company, two law firms, Sherman& Sterling, Skadden Arps, and a manufacturing mining company called Atlas Copco. And my job was to grow the business of AT&T within those accounts, and I did so. Had a lot of great relationships. I left AT&T and I started a company, a solution provider or a channel partner for AT&T, and I ran that company till today, where I become an independent contractor for AT&T. They pay us to sell services. They don't have to pay us unless we sell it for them. We're not a reseller. We work alongside their team. So I used what you said, the same foundation of provide value, speak truthfully, state what you're going to do, follow through with it, right? All these things you were taught as a child. Keep to your word. A handshake is your honor, right? Is your word.
Yeah.
I think some of that's been lost these days with, in business. But I believe that if I say I'm going to do it, I follow through with it. So I spent my time there. It's called Vista Tech Solutions, and then I saw a need in the market for clients asking for consulting services. So what happens is most customers say, I want to deploy an MPLS network. I want to go to the cloud. I want to buy data center services. I want an internet circuit. And you find that you're teaching them more than just selling to them. You're trying to explain to them all the benefits and why they should do this and should not do that. And I saw how digital transformation was becoming the next thing, right? So when I started AT&T, what you said earlier, in 1998, I was right there at the shift of the internet exploding, people getting internet email addresses, people putting up websites, and I saw it. I saw it happening there. I saw the dot-com era in 2000. I saw the crashes, 9/11. I saw all that. And now I'm like, hey, when's the next thing coming? And I saw digital transformation. And I have customers asking me for help all the time. And that's when I say, look, I should look at digital transformation. So I spun out a company called DCT Strategy. What I did was I brought on a bunch of digital transformation consultants. I have 4 or 5 different practices. The majority of the practice now is in AI. So I have about 10 data scientists that work in that area. And I'm providing solutions to customers exactly like I did throughout my career, is companies that need assistance in these areas. How can we help them in their journey in order to solve problems that they have?
No, I think that's really awesome. And the big piece of that I think you mentioned is a lot of the sales process with digital transformation, with pushing things to cloud, with all the new AI tools, with you talked about Internet of Things being a big thing. A lot of people will hear it, think they know what it is, and say they want it. And then that process of educating and figuring out, okay, what's your use case? What is your goal? What do you want to do? What does success look like? Ends up becoming so much of the sales process that really it's like, that shouldn't be a sales cost us. We should come in, do that audit, determine what is going to make this business have the best growth, best outcome potential, best performance. And then how can we use that consulting service to then drive and fuel the business that actually executes and delivers the recommendations? I think, yeah, great model. And what have been the biggest challenges you've seen so far when you're starting that new business up?
Sure. I'll tell you what's interesting. My wife took a class. So you do continuing education. She did a continuing education class at Wharton. It was on strategy. I don't remember the course, but it was strategy, business strategy itself. And everything she's taken in the course is everything we did. So it talks about building a business, strategy, putting the right people in place, not impacting an existing business while you roll out a new business, how not to suffocate one business and start another business, right? And she's watching this, she's telling me, she's like, wow, we've done all of this without actually going through our MBA. So I mean, look, people that go through MBA, it's very important. There's probably a lot of other things you cover, but from my perspective, it is a real life MBA course. So how do we do it? One is understanding the market. So probably the biggest challenge is how to explain what you're delivering to the market And the original feedback or first feedback is pretty interesting. You think you know what you're, I mean, you know what you're offering, you know what your capabilities are, you can do all of it, but you don't know if the market understands it. So a lot of the time, we spent most of our time trying to refine our offer, refine our go-to-market message, and that was the biggest challenge. So we come in with this assessment. We're going to help you understand what's going on, and then some customers will say, "Great, but what do I get for that?"
Mhm.
And you know, you're going through this in your mind, saying, "Did I explain that well? I mean, did I not say the right words? Did I? Is there something wrong with how I'm presenting it?" Right? And you have all these challenges in your mind, and you're trying to, you're trying to figure it out without trying to blame the person for not understanding it. That's where your ego gets in the way. You have to kind of, eliminate that and clear that out of the way and understand that whatever they're saying to you, take that information and see if you can kind of adjust. Perhaps that's some insights in order to craft your offer and get better. So we spent a lot of time recrafting the go-to-market offer to make sure that our end customers are understanding it until we arrived at, that offer is, what we discussed earlier and you kind of highlighted it here, which is companies don't know what they don't know. And they need to understand what is the journey, no matter what it is, whatever product you have. They're like, I have an idea. I want to do this, but I don't know how to start. I don't know where to begin. I don't know what I need to do. I don't know how I'm going to get there. So how do you craft an offer saying that we can help you with all that? Don't worry about it. We'll make it easy for you. We'll come in, we'll understand what your environment is. We'll actually help you create that journey, and then we'll take you on that journey and implement it for you. So it's that first part that you mentioned. You have so much work to do in the beginning.
Mhm.
You have to get through that first before you ever get to your end result. And that's what we arrived at. So that was the biggest challenge, was that go-to-market message and having end customers understand it.
Mhm.
I'm wondering if just as I'm listening to you talk about your path and sort of your drive to perfect your mission statement or your value proposition, I guess, your go-to-market messaging, is there anything about like your non-traditional path that you think makes you more susceptible to like seeing these opportunities, continuing to hustle, and is there anything there that you know makes your non-traditional path like your driver?
I never really thought about it. I guess you're right. I have thought about what keeps me going. I
Hmm.
mean, I have thought about that because anybody that runs a business, everybody thinks that running a business is the most glorified, amazing thing. People put on
Yeah.
Instagram, driving these hot cars and flashing cash, right?
Like
I mean,
hustle culture,
yeah, you see that, and then I have a picture up here somewhere of the success in the iceberg, and everybody always sees the tip of the iceberg out of the water, but nobody sees all the stuff below, right? So the grit and going through that pressure certainly helped with the months where you're not going to make payroll and you have to figure it out, right? I mean, everybody goes through that growing businesses. You have to find the revenue. You have to find ways to make it through the low points, even when you're going to get out of those low points, but you have those times. And so you eventually get to a point where you don't worry about the payroll anymore, right?
Hmm.
But that grit certainly keeps you through the times of rejection, the times of again, people saying, I don't understand what you're giving me, and I'm sorry, I don't want to do business with you. And you have to keep refining that offer. Uh, maybe it's innate.
Hmm.
Maybe it is innate in people. But I think I think it can come out of you. I think it's similar to happiness. I think you can choose to be happy. I think you can choose to be
Yeah.
ambitious. I think you could choose to keep going. If you make a choice to give up, why can't you make a choice to keep going?
Hmm.
Perhaps, perhaps what helps too is understanding or setting a goal in your mind to know, paint a picture of what success means to you, paint a picture of that end state, what it could mean for you, your family, or what you believe you can do, and keep driving toward that. Perhaps that becomes your North Star. Like, when you see that people put on Instagram, we have two guys above and below with a pickaxe, going through the rock, and there's diamonds
Yes.
on the other side, and one guy turns around, he's an inch away from it, the other guy keeps going. I mean, I think these types of conversations help people that may have a moment where they think to give up, and then you hear that somebody else, went through a lot of challenges and they didn't give up. You like those good news stories, especially here in America, right? The underdog.
Oh
But
yeah.
But I think perhaps I put that picture in mind that I can do it because I know what I have inside me, and I've gotten through tough challenges before. And then each challenge you get through, I think that also provides a layer of confidence, and it builds your confidence as well. And then when you start having successes, that adds more confidence, and then confidence breeds confidence. And then
Mm-hmm.
having that kind of North Star picture, that's probably altogether what kept me going.
And you bring up the image of like not giving up, and there's a strong differentiator that I think some people run into here. You have repeatedly talked about, you push something out there, you get rejected, you refine it. You push something out there, you get rejected, you refine it, and you're constantly refining. So it's not that you're not giving up. You're not doing the same thing repeatedly. You're you're testing and iterating your way into a better approach that you know works. So you're not giving up on the process. You give up on what doesn't work. And despite all the failure, you end up grabbing along the way. There's a quote, I'm going to misattribute it. I don't remember who it goes to, but it's basically like, you don't drown from falling in the water, you drown from staying there. It's like, you just have to, everyone's going to fall in the water. That's okay. You're going to get that level of rejection. You're going to have to experience that pain. And then how you deal with it, manage it, and adjust from it is what's really, really important. And it sounds like repeatedly throughout your career, you've had to do that.
Yes, yes. I mean, I do surround myself with people that are not yes people. So I think that's important as well. If you surround yourself with people that constantly tell you how amazing you are and you can do no wrong, like we see it in Hollywood, right? You see it in entertainment. People tell them, the sycophants come around and say, you're the greatest thing ever. And then they hit one bad album, one big film, and they fall to pieces because everybody told them how amazing they were. So my circle is ones that tell me reality, or look, they're not naysayers. They're not negative. I don't like to keep negative people around me. I don't want people telling me I can't do something. I don't want that type of energy, like the Eeyore energy, right? Oh my God, the day is horrible, right? I don't want. And Eeyore drives me nuts, by the way. I can't, with my energy, I can't deal with that. But the people that surround me, I will bounce an idea off them and say, does this idea make sense? If you tell me it doesn't make sense, then I'm not going to keep like, it's almost like somebody can't sing, goes on American Idol, and they're horrible. Right? Because everybody told them they were great. Like, I don't want that. So the people that surround me are honest with me. They tell me I need to change something. If they don't like what I said, or how I went about it, or I didn't meet a commitment to myself or something of that nature. That's what I've done. And my wife's been very good at that. She doesn't pull any punches if it's necessary, but she also doesn't beat me up, right? She'll just give, hey, look, she doesn't believe in cutting your knees off. She believes in just giving you honest feedback so that you can adjust. And then I do have coaches around me as well. I'm a big proponent of coaches, as I said in the beginning of the call, that they give me a level set as well to make sure that I'm not on the wrong path. If I was on the wrong path, please tell me. I don't want to spend the money. I don't want to, run down the wrong
Spend the
direction.
time.
Yes. Well, I mean, I still have to feed my family too. I don't want to do the wrong thing. So I think that's important as well. So I just want to kind of highlight that for anybody on that's listening to this. If you just go with a crazy idea and you have nobody around you giving you that honest feedback or some realism, you can get yourself in trouble. But then again, Steve Jobs had some crazy ideas, and look what he did. So
yeah.
So you got to kind of balance.
Yeah, and I will say a lot. You mentioned hustle culture and all this stuff on Instagram of like people walking around like Ferraris holding stacks of cash, and that's what people think entrepreneurship is. But I think what prevents a lot of people from starting is that fear of failure and not succeeding. And I think because you had a lot of rejection in the sales world, maybe you got a thick skin, and you, like you said, have a support system who gives you honest feedback. So what would you tell somebody maybe who wants to take the leap but is scared of failure? And is that something to be scared of, or maybe just something to embrace? What would you say?
It's a great question. It's a great question, because as a father, I got to balance what I tell my kids, right? How do I push them, but how do I not push them off a cliff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think the best advice is the following. Everybody fears something at some point in time. And courage is not being fearless. Courage is being fearful and doing it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a great kind of comment. But when you get down to the details, you got to be realistic about things. So I would suggest the following. If you have a good idea, you need to find people that are going to give you realistic, true feedback. So I would suggest that you reach, especially in this world of LinkedIn and Instagram, you could find a coach out there. You could find somebody that had success before, and then you do have to kind of vet that person, understand, are they the right person for you? They're not just trying to make money from you and they're going to tell you, go do it, right? The second thing is you do have to surround yourself with people that, provide you some realism. Number three is don't quit your day job if you don't have to for the time being, because that'll take a lot of financial pressure off you and allow you to do things at nighttime, and then test it out, test the market. So I'm testing the market while I'm running another company, and I spend money. It doesn't work. I've just wasted that money. So it's a test loss for me on that side when you're already in business. But if you're doing it and you still have a job, you can test it out and see if the market tells you whether or not it makes sense. And if it does, absolutely go for it. Just understand there's going to be good times and there's going to be bad times. And I think that if you go through some challenges, that's important for you in a business, because you're always going to run into a tough time in life. I think the hardest thing is when somebody comes out and they have success immediately, that if they ever hit a downtime, it's going to be that much harder for them to deal with. So I would say you go for it, but make sure you surround yourself with people that are going to be realistic with you. Get a coach that can talk to you about how to do it in the future. Listen to a lot of podcasts, people that have been through it. But being fearful, think about it. What if you don't do it?
Yeah.
What you're going to be the one, like that. I think, somebody said, maybe Joe Rogan has said at some point in time, is it's probably the worst thing in life is to look at an older man or older woman and look at the disappointment in their eyes of the things they never did because they were too scared to do it.
Yeah.
Life is short. So
That I love that. And when you're on that journey, what have you done to find those coaches and find those mentors?
yeah, it's that's important too. So you could pick the wrong person, right? You could pick the wrong therapist. You could pick the wrong coach in sports that take you to the wrong direction. My daughter had a coach that was telling her how to do goalie in lacrosse, and completely was just like the opposite of what she should have done. So I would say the following: it's like anything else, research. So if you're interested in an area, you need to get out. Social media is probably the greatest thing right now from leveling out the ability to get to people. If you love clothing, well, go follow people from a clothing perspective. Go listen to them on podcasts. Go listen to the things that they do. If you're in technology, go on LinkedIn. Go follow people that are talking about things. Look through the things they're talking about. And in that circle, you'll start opening your eyes up to bigger circles. I'm a big proponent of your mindset. And if your mindset is open to learning new things, then you're going to see opportunities when they're out there. Most people think that people that are successful, they just happen to have a knack of seeing things. I think it's the opposite. I think if you bring happiness, if you think about happiness, if you think about being happy all the time, if you're opening your mind to learning new things, you are going to see opportunities out there that other people aren't, for the pure fact that your mind is open. And there's a thing that I think it was like Success Magazine talked about the RAS filter, and they best explained it like this: we know our names. If we're standing in Grand Central Station in New York City and everybody's there during rush hour, there are tens of thousands of people in there. If somebody screams out Derek, you are going to hear it and you're going to turn, because it's in your mind programmed. You're going to hear it. That's your filter. The same thing comes to business. The same thing comes to opportunities. If you fill your mind with the things you're thinking of and you want to do, your mind's going to open up to see the opportunities. So you will see coaches. You'll start finding coaches that are in the areas you are. If you become active on LinkedIn and things like that, you will start finding people. You can ask them for their opinions. People are not going to yell at you if you say, hey, I'm looking for a coach. Do you have any suggestions? Then interview people and see what style works for you. Look, they're going to charge money. So what can you afford or can't you afford? And then from there, those coaches will get you from here to here because they've already been through it before. So instead of making all the mistakes that you made, why not just have somebody get you to that point much quicker? And I think that as a new entrepreneur, you can do so much more if you have somebody guiding you along the way. I didn't have it at the beginning. Now I have it. So
I think that's really good advice. And I think a lot of people are either nervous or afraid to invest in themselves, like as an individual. Like they'll spend money in different places, but truly doing something that's an investment in just themselves, I feel like they're like, oh, that's $1,000. Ooh, that's $500 or whatever it is. And they get turned off by it, not understanding that $500, that $1,000, that $10,000 will return over a lifetime so much more value to them. Even in a year, returns so much more value to them.
Yeah, you know what I would say to change that? So it'd probably be the analogy of if somebody didn't like a certain sport, well, come, let's go watch it. Let's go see. Let's go experience it. Let's see what happens, right? And I think the same thing goes. I've seen all things on LinkedIn when people say they'll spend, go out to a bar and spend $100 on drinks, but they won't buy a book for $17.95 to go learn about how to exit a business, right? And it's true because most people don't think about that. So if you start surrounding yourself with like-minded individuals, people that want to get there, or if you're not in that mindset yet, but you want to be, go surround yourself with people that are thinking that way. And what will happen is they will open your mind up to the reason why you invest $1,000 in yourself. And they will talk about the experiences they had and how they got from here to growing a massive business because they believed in themselves or somebody told them to invest $1,000 in themselves. So the best thing to do is surround yourself in these networks, get involved. Like one of my coaches is Adam Coffey. He was a CEO for 21 years. He had 58 businesses that he bought. He exited, 3 companies, billions of dollars in exits. He left the job as a CEO and now he coaches because he wants to give back. I mean, he's brilliant. He's provided so much tremendous values to tons of businesses out there and helping companies out. And he's just one person in a network of so many people. If you plug into people like this, they'll open your mind up to all the possibilities. And perhaps if you were scared about spending $1,000, once you hear a lot of different stories, you'll say that's probably the greatest investment I could ever make is in myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you see that a lot across industries where it's like people have a hard time with getting a personal trainer or, maybe a financial advisor, even though all of those things cost money. It's really about taking care of yourself for the long term. But I do think some people struggle, and maybe it's a generational thing. Maybe it's a cultural thing. I will say Gen Zers love some self-care and love to I feel like maybe they're more open to it now. We can maybe learn something from that because investing in yourself in the short term is going to have long-term benefits. And it is hard to, I think, as an elder millennial, sometimes it's hard to see that.
Sure. So. I mean, if you look at sports, the whole sports system, even from high school, if you were involved in sports, there was a coach. Why? You weren't born knowing how to play soccer.
Right.
You have a talent, but they have to help you develop it. And that coach will get you to that next level. You have teachers. Teachers are teaching you a subject, but they could also guide you in a way. You can have a good teacher, you can have a bad teacher. We have grown up with that type. But then once people get out of college, they tend to think you go into the business world that you no longer need a coach. You no longer need somebody guiding you along the way. Oh my God, they're just going to take my money. Well, yes, there's always somebody out there that's going to try to take your money, or somebody will say they can do something when they can't. But if you plug yourself into certain networks, you're going to find the people that really stand out, the people that have your same values, and then once you plug yourself in, you'll change your thought process about whether or not to work with a coach. And then once you see the results, you're going to look back and say, what everybody else says, ready for it? Everybody says this. Why didn't I do this 10 years ago?
Yeah.
No, I think that whole theme comes through. Once you get your mind in a place where you're seeking more opportunity and abundance, you start recognizing it and seeing it. You don't see a problem over here. You see an opportunity over here. And then when you have the right level of coaching, the right mentorship to help you develop that skill and help you get to the point of developing how to execute on that, you end up in a really good place. So that's, I think that's really, really sound advice. And moving forward from that, what does that future look like for y'all? As you're building this new business, as you're trying to get new client base, what do you see as the strongest opportunities for you in the next 18 months?
Sure. So AI has burst onto the scene, right? Again, I was there at the beginning when internet became huge, 97, 98. I was in technology when it happened. I saw how things changed. So it's interesting when as Warren Buffett says, when people are fearful, be greedy. When people are greedy, be fearful, which is not in how to make money. It can apply to everything. When people are fearing something, you really have to look at it and say, well, there's an opportunity for change here. What's a way to help people? So AI has now burst onto the scene from what we do on our side, and people need help. People need to understand what's happening. And what I see our future being is that we're going to help a lot more companies understand how to find what AI model to use, how to put it into their business, how to remain competitive in this new market. Because I'm a strong component that strong believer in the fact that if you don't disrupt your business, somebody else is going to disrupt your business for you. So either you innovate now, otherwise your competitors are going to innovate, and then you're going to be playing catch up, especially in this new world. So I see ourselves helping more companies enter this new AI world and becoming far more successful in this next age of AI and the transformation it's going to bring. And I believe that value is going to be something that which I've always done my whole career, which is how do I help people? How do I give back? Certainly we make money in the, in the reverse, but helping companies out and having somebody truly be able to still provide for their customers or still provide for their employees. I see that in the next 18 months, the AI is just going to get bigger and bigger, and companies are going to be deploying it more and more. And that if you're not doing it 18 months from now, you're going to be wishing that you did.
Yeah, we would 100% agree with you on that. Yeah, I think a lot of people hear the headlines, hear the buzzwords, but if you can demystify that and how to make it actionable, they're going to struggle and they're going to get disrupted. So you have to put yourself in a position to provide that value to make sure that the client base can continue to develop and provide that value. I think it makes perfect sense. We like your business model quite a bit. We like what you're doing. We love the grit that you've had. And typically, we like to try and round this out with 2 questions. I think we even primed you with them, so you had some time to think about it. But we'll let Lauren ask her favorite question next.
Yeah, this is the most interesting. And I am curious, since at 18, you had a pretty interesting transition from school to UPS. So if you could sit down with 18-year-old version of yourself, knowing what you know now, knowing what you've been through, what advice would you give 18-year-old you?
Sure. And every time somebody asks a question like this, I always think of the butterfly effect.
Mm-hmm.
So, because if I change anything, then I change everything, right? So from that, so I don't wish that I changed anything, but here's the advice I would give to myself that could actually help a lot of people out, because I thought about it a lot in my career at AT&T as well. And I've been a much bigger proponent of it now myself. I used to come from the school of thought, maybe it's generational. I used to come from the school of thought that if you worked hard and you had a lot of success in whatever role or job you were doing, that opportunities would open up for you and people would pull you up and promote you and put you into certain positions. That is false. It is not the truth. And myself and a bunch of people all thought the same way. It is not the truth. You have got to market yourself. You have got to be your biggest cheerleader, your biggest proponent. I'm not saying that you have to be obnoxious or arrogant in the things that you say to people or how you present yourself out there, but you have to talk to people about what your values are, what you can contribute to organizations, what you contribute to roles. You have to be active on social media, give back, help people out. And I think if I was to tell myself at 18, it would be do more of that. Talk to more people about what it is that you can offer, your grit, your pressure, all that stuff. And that would have got me to where I am much quicker than what I did, because I always believed that, success would just come to me because I was successful, and people would just come along and say, "Hey, Kurt, I got something great for you." That's not the
Well,
truth.
I think you thought that because that's like an assumption a lot of people have. It's what you're sort of told, and it is a lie. It's not the truth, and it's interesting. I talk to a lot of folks who are transitioning from college into their first job, or maybe they're trying to get an internship. And I do talk about like how internal networking, especially within an organization, is so important, because as an intern, you can sit at your desk and like make your PowerPoint presentation, but what if you go introduce yourself to somebody who you don't work with, as part of your track there? What if you offer to get coffee with them, ask to have lunch with them, and get to know them, so that maybe there's another opportunity that you don't know exist yet that they think about you for. Like, oh, this so-and-so would be a perfect person for that. And I think I think it's hard for younger people to do that. I don't know if they're exposed to that as much. And I think there's some nervousness around that, but it's the most important thing you do. And that's really any age. But when I talk to younger people, it's like, oh, you can do that. You can just like go up to people and ask them to get coffee and pick their brain and ask for advice. I was like, yeah, that's actually the best thing that you could probably do at your internship. More important than your PowerPoint, more important than the project that you're working on.
They love talking about themselves. You go up to them and say, hey, I
Yes.
really love to learn what you did, how you got to where you were. I'm just trying to understand what I should do in my life. They're like, let's go. I can't wait to tell you about myself. Right.
Yes.
So yeah, they should absolutely. I didn't do that. And, that's something that I would have changed at that age.
Yeah. So people think that hard work and doing a really good job early on and keeping your head down, that gives you more money and more opportunity and more promotions. But what it really does is it gives you more work. People realize that you are the person that can execute on this and you get delegated to more. And while it's important to work hard, it's really important to deliver great work. It's also important to be a great communicator and a great networker. And when we were talking through a while back on how people get promoted in their role, it really ends up being who is the better communicator. So if you get stepped over, you get walked over by somebody and you're like, well, I'm smarter than that person. Like I do better work than that person. They can probably communicate better. They can probably break down a complex topic better, and they might be more likable. Like, you end up with a likability problem. Speaking from experience, it doesn't go very well for you. When you try to be like that really aggressive counterculture person, you have to do that. You have to dance softly. You have to make friends. You have to create alliances so that you can deliver better results as a team.
Yeah, you can't brag about yourself. You have to just help and talk about yourself a little bit, what your abilities are, what you're looking to do.
Yeah.
Because nobody likes a bragger, but yeah, it's a fine line, but certainly it's the right thing to do.
Yep. Yeah. No, we love that. And then as a wrap up, you mentioned a lot of great stuff. What books, what podcasts, what information is top of mind from you? What media are you listening to and consuming right now?
Sure. So I used to read a lot more books, but then running businesses and I have 5 kids, I kind of run out of time. Even I'm not even giving most of my time to them, right? Because you're just so busy. But it's the last book I read. I don't even remember the last book I read. I actually have one on my desk. It's Exit, Private Equity, How to Exit, which is from Adam Coffey, which it's great because if you own a business, you go learn about that world. It's a smart thing to do. The rest of my time I'm spending reading periodicals, reading what's happening in AI. I'm very active in social media on LinkedIn, find out what's going on there. I don't watch a lot of TV. So I find that I'm doing what I did back when I first started at AT&T. I'm just consuming so much information about the industry to understand, to keep my finger on the pulse, because things are so rapidly changing that I know I have to stay on top of it. That, doing the other things like getting on TikTok and watching a silly video maybe fills up like 5 minutes of my time. And then I'm back to, life, children, and then back to business. Do I have to refine my offer again? What do my customers want? What's the next project going on? So I do have a book full of a desk full of books that I want to get to. I haven't got to it yet. And podcasts, I mean, I'll listen to things like Joe Rogan, just listen to some of the topics. Like, it's interesting to listen to some of the people that have been, where you want to be and listening to it. I've listened to other podcasts that are in this segment as well, but that's where I spend a lot of my time. Sorry, I didn't come out with, read this book and that book and this book, because that's the secret to everything. I wish I had that answer.
Yeah, and I think if someone grabs a book thinking it's going to be the secret to something, they might be misguided. But for $15, if they can get, like John Mark, one of our friends, talks about this, if you can spend that $15 and you get 1 or 2 nuggets of wisdom that you can apply in your life, that's a win. You don't have to consume, memorize, and regurgitate an entire book. But to your point, if you can consume those periodicals, you get the industry news, you're playing on LinkedIn, you're collecting as much data point as possible so you can provide your customer with the best value, so you can deliver the best opportunities for yourself. That's really where the win is.
Yep. We're a connected world, right? Everybody's talking to one another. No one person has all the knowledge of everything else. It's not. I think 2 books I would probably tell people to read are The Magic of Thinking Big, which is a very easy book, but it all talks about mindset and it gives you examples of mindset. And then the one that's kind of always out there is Who Moved My Cheese? And I think that if you're an entrepreneur, go read that book.
Yeah. The other one that I like to talk about quite a bit is, especially in your world, I think I mentioned it even in our pre-call, was Loon Shots. Loon Shots is one of our favorites because it's like those books you just mentioned. Really, really good stuff. Kurt, this has been awesome. We have a lot of info we took in, really great advice. Loved hearing your story. And we really, really enjoyed chatting with you. We can't wait to see where your business goes. We can't wait to see where that story and journey keeps going. And we're really glad you could join us today.
I'm really happy to be here. It was a pleasure. I really enjoyed speaking with both of you.
All right, we'll
Thanks,
talk to you
Kurt.
soon. And thank you so much.
Bye-bye.